We begin our story with the Africans brought over in 1619 to the British colony of North America. When we talk about these Africans in North America, we're talking about people who are, of course, helping to build the colonial economic infrastructure. That's what they're brought over for, ultimately, is as laborers to help build the colonial infrastructure, which of course we know, as we know, because we know we're standing here in 2012, which becomes the United States of America, so they're really building a nation. But ultimately a Civil War exhibit that's dealing with African American soldiers and sailors is a military exhibit. And when we look at what's happening in Africa that's supplying many of these Africans to North America, or to the British colonies of North America, wars are going on. So we have laborers and warriors. Colonel Abdul Rahman Ibrahima of the Fulbe, or the Fulani people, is one of the most noted senior officers, military officers, brought to North America. So we present him because if you do further research on this African military officer, you'll find that he was a college graduate, graduated from Sankore University Mosque, Timbuktu, and you'll be able to appreciate the military tradition of the Messina region of Mali and of West Africa, and the various ethnic groups like the Wolof, the Hausa, the Mandinka, the Susu, who provide many enslaved persons to North America, but many of them are soldiers, military men, who have a point of view that is different than what I'm going to call a teenager like Kunta Kinte. He's a teenager. These military men are captured as prisoners of war. And so many of their sons would reflect what Captain Andre Caillou would say. General, when asked if his men would fight, this is during the Civil War, he actually makes this comment, but it shows you the understanding of their African forefathers. He says, General, we come of a fighting race. Our fathers were brought here slaves because they were captured in war and in hand-to-hand fights too. We are willing to fight. So this is that military tradition. In American history, when you see the deployment of African Americans in the military in the early American history, much of it is born of military necessity. When the American Revolution began, it was Lord Dunmore, the governor of Virginia, the colonial governor of Virginia, who enlists men of African descent, which really forces the hand of the Continental Army. And so it's out of military necessity that African Americans in this fight for independence wind up as soldiers, sailors, and Marines fighting for independence. After independence is gained, there's a lot of activity within the African American community in search of civil rights. Richard Allen, Prince Hall, Absalom Jones, Paul Cuffey, these individuals aren't idle. And so they're in this struggle for civil rights. And when they look at the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they believe that America has established an ideal, a creed, that they can use against those who are really promoting slavery. And so we have this from George Lawrence in 1813, where it says, this government founded on the principle of liberty and equality and declaring them to be the free gift of God, if not ignorant of their declaration, must enforce it. So they believe that using their own language against them, they can force the changes. This is Colonel Abdul Rahman Ibrahima. He spends 40 years in captivity, Natchez, Mississippi, makes a northern speaking tour. After his northern speaking tour, in which his escort David Walker, David Walker writes the appeal to colored citizens of the world. Did he have an influence on Walker? I believe certainly. Again, military necessity. The War of 1812. In 1792, it was illegal. Congress passed legislation that made it illegal to arm men of African descent, to bring them into the Federal Army. So they can't join the Army during the War of 1812. So General Andrew Jackson down in Louisiana, he convinces the governor of Louisiana, Claiborne, to get legislation through that will authorize them joining the state militia of Louisiana so he could get them in his army. And in the Battle of New Orleans, January of 1815, they fight. It's the only land battle won by U.S. forces during the Civil War, and it happened to, during the War of 1812, and it happened to have occurred